how did you lead up to the time that you left the military and then you pivoted and then decided to go back to Iraq? You went, not go back, but go to Iraq to work with the Iraqi soldiers and become a humanitarian warrior. I mean, how did that happen? How did that occur? And how did you decide that?
Yeah, it's. I guess I decided it in very much the same way that I decided to be a SEAL. I just kind of like one day just made the decision to go. But so the motivation behind it was during my time in Afghanistan, as great of a time as I had, and we had a really successful, positive deployment. I was very frustrated with the 18 months that after I got home from Afghanistan. So for 18 months, ISIS was in full swing. This is 2015, going into 2016. And I was like, man, I'm already trained. Like, just send me to Iraq. Like, like there's bad guys over there. There's tons of bad guys. Like, why don't we just send a ton of SEALs and send a bunch of Rangers and Green Berets? Like, send us over. Like, let us go crush these fools. And there were guys over there, but there were troop limits. So I didn't get to go, and I was like, well, that's kind of frustrating. So I spent another 18 months of training, and then so during my second deployment in Southeast Asia, I was doing a bunch of different research on different wars that were going on, different conflicts around the planet, especially in the Southeast Asia area. And I was like, at one point we were in Thailand, and I knew, I was like, dude, if we are a 45-minute helicopter flight across the border into Burma, where there's genocide happening, rape, murder. This evil government is oppressing and killing people, burning people alive, and we're sitting here doing nothing. We're sitting here training with like the Thai military, which those are good guys, but it was like I didn't sign up to train other people. Like at the time I was 24, so I was 24, and I'm like, dude, like I'm young. Let's go.
Got a lot of I have a lot of energy.
yeah, but I'm like, dude, I'm fully trained. I've got like combat experience. Like, let's go hunt these bad guys down and take them out. But more importantly, there's people that need help. Like, nobody's helping these people. Right. And so I guess just over time, I just realized the interesting thing about being in the military is you can see your future. You can see, once you make the next rank, essentially where you're going to be within the platoon structure. Within the training staff, like exactly what's going to happen, and once you make chief and senior chief and master chief, you know exactly what's going to happen. And I just saw that. I just saw where the guys who were farther down the line than me were, and I was like, yeah, no thanks, I'm good. And I was like, I signed up to go help people. Again, going back to my childhood, and I joined the military originally for very, very altruistic reasons. And so I saw that the war in Iraq was going on, and I was like, well, they're not going to send me. So I was like, well, people need help, and I can go over there and I guess work as a humanitarian. That was kind of a guess, and it was like, man, I was like, if I don't go over there, I'm gonna not be able to live with myself.
I mean, that's quite a decision, and really admirable of you, because most people pulling back from that type of situation would say to themselves, I don't want to risk get in harm's way and get hurt. I want to go back to my family. But you make a decision not based on the fact that you're a soldier. You make a decision that you want to go back into that chaotic region because you want to help the innocent people on the ground.
Mm-hmm. I wanted.
You just went. You
help as a soldier, but because I was a human. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so for me, the way that I look at it, though, I was putting myself in harm's way, and yes, that's where I was going to. But if it can operate and handle being in that environment, it's me. Because I'm trained for this, right? And then the second thought is, man, it's dangerous over there for me. All the kids. What about all the innocent women and children that are caught in the middle of all this? What about the old men? Defend themselves. Like, what about the old women? What about the people? Nobody's helping the people. Everybody's so focused on fighting,
right?
Helping the people in between. And so I was
because I just want to say something. I just want to just add something because I think this is really important and a crux to our interview and why I wanted to talk to you. You know, here back in the States, when you were listening to the news, listening to TV, reading the papers, you weren't hearing so much about what was happening to the people on the ground. And I think that it's really interesting and you know, a compliment to you that, you know, your mindset changed a little bit and it wasn't about just liberating that area for the United States or other geopolitical interests. Your primary interest on the ground there became the people that were in harm's way and were collateral damage to what this conflict was causing over there. And that's what really motivated you as a human being. And I think that really is what I find very, very interesting and very, very human about your story and about you as a person.
Hmm. I think, so obviously we'll get into more detail on what happened when I got over there in Iraq, but people always ask me, they say stuff like, well, why would you go do that? Courageous of you, or this, that, the other thing. But then I always tell them, I'm like, look, if that was your kid that was out there, I guarantee you would go, no matter the risk, no matter what you might have to sacrifice, no matter what could happen to you. It doesn't matter. You're gonna go. You're gonna go, and you're gonna do whatever you can to help them. And
But it wasn't your,
we
but
always talk about how
they weren't your children though. They were other
exactly
people's
what.
children.
But here's my thought. But are they? Like, you know what I mean? But
I
like
get it.
that's my
Yeah.
point. Like, if you truly believe that, like we as humans are all brothers and sisters, and growing up in a Christian household, it was always, we were always taught that we're all brothers and sisters. We are all the children of God. We used to sing the song as a kid, red and yellow, black and white. We are precious in His sight. Referring to Jesus. It was like, dude, like it doesn't matter. So like whether that is my kid or not my kid or whatever, that's a kid. That's somebody's kid, and somebody has to go help them. And I don't have kids, so I don't understand the full bond there. But the point is, they're real people too. They need help, and so for me,
Absolutely.
it was like, I'm gonna go. I have the ability to help, and if I don't help, then shame on me, because I have the ability to actually go and help. Whereas
Were
other
there were
people,
there
might
other
care,
were,
but they can't.
were there other SEALs or soldiers such as yourself that were doing the same thing? Were they far in between? What did you find when you got back
Yeah.
when you got
So
to Iraq?
when Yeah, so when I went over there, I joined up with a group of other humanitarians that were out there doing doing lots of good work, and a lot of them were former military guys as well. None of them SEALs, and yeah, it was like I definitely wasn't the only one over there. And then if you look at what's interesting too about the war on ISIS is, especially like in Syria and other parts of Iraq, there was a lot of Western volunteers, even people who had never been in the military, who went and volunteered to fight ISIS. Because if you look at ISIS is essentially our generation's Nazis. Like, we haven't seen a group that evil since the Nazis existed. And imagine if you were alive back in the early 40s and you had the opportunity to go fight the Nazis. Like, that would be like such. That would be like. I mean, that would be such an honor. That would be such a drive and such an important mission to go do, and such a great thing to be a part of, stopping those evil men. Well, ISIS is here, or ISIS was there, and so I wanted to be a part of that. And there were other guys too. Yeah, so I embedded with a group of humanitarians who were out there, handing out water bottles and doing the medical thing, and that whole deal. And that's what I originally thought I'd be doing, but we ended up embedding with the Iraqi army, and then the whole thing just blew up.
Right, and then so you basically you went over there for humanitarian reasons, and you were involved in that manner, but it got back into combat. It pulled you back into a combat type situation with these guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what we ended up doing was, we were working alongside an Iraqi armored division, and who was tasked with going through and clearing a bunch of villages on the outskirts around Mosul. There's all these different little villages in the plains of Nineveh, and every time they would liberate a new area, obviously wounded in the fighting, but then you would have a whole bunch of civilians who were fleeing the fighting, and many of them sick. They don't have food. Where do they go? And so we were there to help take care of them. And when the Iraqi army would make a push, they didn't have dedicated combat medics like we have. So our understanding, in American movies, when you watch an American movie and a soldier gets hit, everybody starts either screaming medic or corpsman. Well, the Iraqis, they don't have that. They don't have an equivalent of that. So when your buddy gets shot, you just kind of sit there and you're like, they don't really know what to do. They have no training. And so we were there to help them, when guys were wounded. Yeah, we ended up on the front lines of the fighting. And the unit we were with, again, was an armored unit. And when you look at warfare, armored units work much better over flat terrain, nice rolling hills. That's where they work well. Armor, it doesn't work so well when you're going into a tight urban area. So we could see Mosul off in the distance. We heard we could see the explosions and see the tracers every night kind of shooting up into the sky. We never thought we would actually go into that city though, because we're like, this unit's not going to go in there, but that's not what happened.
And this was about Mosul, because this is the city that ISIS believes was their holy city. It's what they believe. It's what they were protecting. Is that correct?
I don't know if they consider it a holy city. I don't know enough about their ideology to know that, but Mosul is where al-Baghdadi got up and claimed and I guess proclaimed the formation of the caliphate, this new Islamic empire, the Islamic State. And so Mosul is kind of the ground zero of where it happened, where things really, really started. And obviously it spread into Syria, and there's still issues. But yeah, Mosul was a massive ISIS stronghold. The people there, not all of them, but a good portion of the people were very sympathetic with ISIS, unfortunately. And that's why they chose to go to Mosul. And so for 3 years, they had full reign of the entire city. They were setting up industry. They were making their own. They were making their own weapons, making their own bullets. They had their own currency, but they were also. It was this horrible, horribly evil place as well. The human trafficking and the butchering of humans and the super strict Sharia law was extremely enforced on the people. And it was a horrible, devilish place. So by the time we got there, if you look at Mosul on a map, it's basically cut down the middle. And on the east side, it's cut down the middle by the Tigris River. And on the east side of the river, that entire side had already been cleared of the ISIS. Electricity had been restored. Cars are driving around. People are going about their lives. But on the west side of the river, completely blacked out. And you have thousands and thousands of ISIS fighters just hiding in these buildings and waiting for an attack to come and claim.
The breakout of ISIS occurred and gained momentum after we liberated Iraq, got rid of Saddam Hussein. That's when it really started to develop and get really chaotic, and ISIS sort of came to be and recognized more. I mean, we started hearing about it more in the United States. It was after our involvement there. It wasn't so much before. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And you had told me you told me that they were also the leader, the guy that you mentioned his name. I can't even pronounce his name. But you told me that you told me that a lot of the organizers were in jail together, and they developed a number of rules and regulations and codes that they live by. A book, however you want a playbook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, So you're absolutely right. ISIS wasn't a thing until we went in. So what happened though? ISIS wasn't so much of a formation that happened until sort of toward the end of our time in Iraq. So when we went into Iraq, we pretty easily decimated the entire Iraqi army, and so we occupied the entire country. And so the way that the Al Qaeda, the terrorist networks, would fight back against us, they would use insurgent tactics. They're walking around in plain clothes. They'll plant a bomb. They'll throw a grenade there. They'll occasionally do some kind of a complex ambush, but for the most part, they're it's they're fighting an insurgency, and the only real crazy gunfights or super crazy fights that would happen is when we would learn where they were at, and we'd send in special ops guys to go take down that building, and then that's when that's when the real gunfights and real crazy things would happen.
Right.
But what would happen is all around the country, we were going around and finding these different insurgent cells, right? Think of it like a criminal cell, right? One cell doesn't know about the other cell, right? In case one leader gets captured, they can't give away everybody else, right? Everything was very staggered. But what was happening is we were capturing all these bad guys from all over Iraq, and then we were putting them in the same we were putting them all basically into the same prison system. And so you've got guys from northern Iraq and from southern Iraq sharing a cell, and in some jail, and of course their fervor and hatred is building and building and building.
They're all pissed. They have a commonality of anger.
They're so pissed. Now the problem is they can all just sit there and plan and scheme and talk about, hey man, when we get out of here, here's what we're gonna do. And I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe we actually had Baghdadi in captivity at one point. And so you have all these guys, and they're talking about that they're able to network and coordinate and all this stuff. Well, in 2011, we left when the Iraqi military was not ready to secure the country. They were not ready to defend the country themselves. And so basically what happened is in late 2011, early 2012, all these ISIS guys broke out of prison. They all got out of there, and they all scattered back to wherever their homes were or whatever. And over the next couple of years, they started planning their next big move. And al-Baghdadi emerged as the leader. And he made the decision, he personally didn't make the decision, but as a group, they made a decision. All right, we're going to start a country. Basically, we're going to start our own country, ISIS land,
right,
or the Islamic State, right?
Anti-Disneyland for sure.
Is anti-Disneyland, exactly. Yeah. So, but what's interesting about that is they're no longer fighting an insurgency, right? It's no longer little hit and run tactics. It's no longer little skirmishes that pop up. It's no longer just little roadside bombs. They're controlling a territory, and they're going to fight for that territory, just like, let's say, the German army did in World War II. They're holding the ground.
What was the purpose though in holding that? I mean, what did they want to accomplish? I mean, obviously the destabilization,
start their own country,
right? Destabilization of that region. They saw a hole. They saw an opportunity for them for whatever they believed in, or whatever whatever they knew their purpose was. That anger. Mm-hmm. They wanted to secure a region for themselves. A bunch of angry dudes want to secure a region for themselves.
Right, exactly. And so basically, if you look at the term ISIS, ISIS, Islamic State in Syria is what we refer to it as. There's also ISIL, Islamic State in the Levant, which just means the Eastern Mediterranean, Middle East. But the important two words are Islamic State. So, and the key word there is state. They want to create, their goal was to create an actual country that they controlled, just like America. They wanted their own borders. They wanted their own religion and language and everything. They wanted to start start from scratch and build their own country. And
a very fundamentalist. A very fundamentalist foundation as well too, and that was probably a big part of their motivation. I mean,
yes, they were
thousands of years of ideology there.
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely, and their goal was to create basically a country, an Islamic country. They wanted a country that was ruled by what they call Sharia law, or just basically Islamic law. It's like, imagine if the U.S. was just ran by the Pope, right? That'd be Catholic law. Well, for them, they have, this Sharia law, this Islamic law. And that's what they wanted. And so when we went in to flush them out, we're no longer dealing with an insurgency that's just doing some roadside bombs and some snipers and some grenades here and there, these random attacks. Now it's an entrenched, well dug in, well defended, well prepared, hardened enemy that will fight for every single inch of ground, who will fight for every single inch of ground that we're trying to take back.
So what you're saying is they were getting better at what they were doing.
100%. And what's really interesting is, so I fought I fought the Taliban in Afghanistan, who were an insurgency, or guerrilla warfare, and then I fought ISIS, and it was a totally different experience. It was a completely different enemy. They were using completely different tactics. They were fighting basically a maneuver style warfare, which was not a smart move. I think they calculated that we would not get involved. I think they calculated that the U.S. did not have the stomach to get involved again, and that's why they made that decision, which was a terrible decision because you're just never going to beat the U.S. military on a just a normal conventional war, as they say. It's not going to happen.